Hello, and welcome to another episode of Season 3 of Legal Wellbeing in Action. Today's episode, Ho Ho, Hold On a Minute, The Stresses and Joys of the Holiday Season, is another installment of this year's theme, Wellbeing, a Deeper Dive. For this episode, State Bar PPG Director Pamela Moore speaks with clinical psychologist Dr. Evelyn Sandeen about the stresses and joys of the holiday season. Whether from family drama, time demands, seasonal affective disorder, over-indulgence, travel, or the drive to have that perfect holiday, Pam and Dr. Sandeen talk about how to manage the stress of the holidays and strategies for finding joy in the midst of it all. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction, Bill. And I am thrilled to be here today. My name is Pam Moore, and I am the director of the Professional Programs Group here at the State Bar of New Mexico. And with me today, as you just heard, I have Dr. Evelyn Sandeen, who is a board-certified clinical psychologist and has been in practice for over 35 years. And I am just so honored and thrilled to have you here today, Dr. Sandeen. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Pam. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, today we have an appropriate topic for where we are for the holiday season. And we have always heard, or I've always heard, that people tend to struggle a little bit more around the holidays. And I've seen some of that, but I would say I probably hear it more than I see it. And so we're going to be talking about maybe why that is, why people struggle, what it looks like when they do, how like, examples of that. And then what can people do to prepare themselves if they know they do struggle? And then we're going to wrap it up with any tips or tools that you have, for people, especially around substance use as well, if people tend to use a little bit more alcohol over the holidays. So, but I want to start with, have you heard that? Have you seen that in your practice and with your clients, that they tend to struggle a little bit more during the holidays? And can you give some examples of that?
Sure. Yeah, I actually have seen that quite a bit. And I think you can sort of think of external and internal reasons for that. Some of the internal reasons, I think, have to do with people's own history and their own family history, especially around holidays. And there is documentation that holidays are a very high-risk time for both sudden death from heart attack and also domestic violence and just unpleasantness. So there's a good subset of people who have very extremely unpleasant to traumatic memories that come up around holiday times. And so that can certainly come up, obviously, be triggered by the holidays themselves. I think, in today's world with a lot of social media, especially, although this was always the case to some degree, there's sort of comparison. And, you could call it the Facebook effect or the Instagram effect. Everybody else, look at that beautiful family. They all seem to be getting along, look at how beautiful their house is, whatever. So a lot of comparison there. And it's a truism that comparison is the thief of joy, but it's really true. So comparison, and then also sort of expectations that we hold. We might just be saying, I need to do A, B, and C. I need to, get the perfect gift for everyone. I need to, a lot of internal expectations and stresses like that. And some people have a disorder called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, S-A-D, and that's a real biological thing. People do suffer with that, and that means that as the light gets less during the day, they are triggered into a depressive episode. So that's a real thing. You probably know that if that's happening to you. There are treatments for that. People should see a professional, but one of the treatments is a light machine where you can get high quality light, put that on for an hour or two in the morning, and that really helps a lot of people. So that's a very small subset of people, but that does occur. And then, in terms of external things, I think there's so many external causes of stress during the holidays. One of them would be just increased time demands. And I know our audience is mostly very, very busy people who are already under a lot of time stress. And now, the wife or the husband or the family is asking them to do more. And so just having your time sort of taken away from you and losing control of your time can be stressful, especially when you still have professional duties to attend to. A lot of folks travel, and I don't need to tell you how pleasant that is these days. Not very pleasant, so that's just terrible. And there is something to the idea that people you don't see for every day that you might see at holiday time may not be compatible with you in terms of your politics, opinions, that kind of thing. And there could be more conflict. There's actually evidence there are more conflicts, more family conflicts around the holidays. So that's unpleasant. And I think a big one is something that maybe we'll talk about in more depth later, which is overindulgence of all kinds. So, food-wise, substance-wise, overindulgences that really contribute to us feeling physically poor. Mm-hmm. And then from there, not feeling well, just compounds other things. And if you're traveling, for example, you might not have access to your normal outlets. You might not be exercising the way you normally do, or get to your gym, or whatever your normal stress reducer is might not be available to you if you don't plan for it.
Right. Wow. I'm glad you mentioned all those things. I have thought about the main one that pops into my mind when I think about emotional and maybe mental stress over the holidays is being with family. And like you said, maybe not the politics not aligning, or just family dynamics that tend to play out that remind you, right, that you're getting triggered from the past of how it felt 10 or 15 or 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. Right. And you still feel like maybe you're getting treated the same way, or that there is that dynamic that still works. So that was one that I thought of, but I had not thought of the social media, the comparisons. Mm-hmm. Really interesting. Getting the perfect gift, everything looking mm-hmm. festive and perfect. Yeah. And, oh my gosh, the Joneses have their lights up, and look at, right. They're all dressed up and doing this and doing that. Why aren't we doing that? So I hadn't thought about that. And then absolutely the seasons, the lack of daylight, December 21st being the day where we have the least amount of daylight, and then that does affect us. So yes, and then more alcohol around the holidays. So which, is there any one of those that you feel would be helpful to do maybe a little bit more of a deep dive into, especially knowing that our listeners are legal professionals, judges, law students, lawyers, but yes, they also have families, and they also, they can be very busy at the holidays, but so is everybody else. Which one do you think is, would you do a little bit more deep dive in?
Well, there's a couple of interesting studies that I'd like to share, and that might give some clues. One is from 2014, and they looked at subjective well-being pre and post holidays, and they found that ritual really helped feelings of well-being. So things that it could be religious, but it doesn't have to be. If you've always trimmed the tree together, or gone caroling, or had Hanukkah in a particular way, doing those things really does increase satisfaction and decreases loneliness. So I think ritual is extremely important, and if you don't have any, no time like the present to build them. So I think the point is being intentional right? Like, how do I want my holidays to look? One other paper I'd like to mention is that increased happiness was associated with family and religious experiences, and decreased happiness was associated with spending and receiving gifts. So
Interesting.
isn't that interesting? So I think a lot of people are also stressed by spending. You know, whether or not you have the money, it still can be stressful to be in a spending and receiving in a very superficial mode. And so in terms of what to do, maybe I think intentionality is everything, Pam. It's just like, go into the holidays saying, what do I want them to look like? And sort of, you know, and of course, we're not in it alone. You have family and you have other people, but still to take more responsibility for how you want your holiday season to go, and maybe say no to something that you've always, you know, gritted your teeth and gone with before, so that you can say yes to something else that's maybe more meaningful, or talk with your spouse about putting a cap on the budget, or eliminate a whole thing. My husband and I did this a few years ago. We always got a live tree and decorated it. We decided just to have this little tiny artificial tree, and it just eliminated one thing to do that we always had to do. So is there something you can cut out that is okay to cut out, and put more effort into ritual, into family time or religious experiences, if that is something that is attractive to you?
I love those. I love what you said, be intentional. I so believe in that, and really taking responsibility for how you want you to play out during the holidays, how you see it playing out, you know, as much as you can for yourself. And so what brings you joy? What gives you a sense of satisfaction? Where do you feel like you're well and you're happy and you're thriving? And then where are those places that maybe you feel dread?
Mm-hmm.
You look forward and you're like, God, I really dread, you know, doing that or going there or buying that. And I love that you know, you and your husband said, we cut out something. We didn't need the big, you know, live tree anymore. We did something a little different because that's what we wanted, and that's what, you know, worked for us. And so, you know, when you were talking, I was thinking about boundaries. That's kind of what comes up for me, is that, and I look at, you know, us as human beings, the outline of us is a boundary, and the choices that we make inform other people who we are and where our, you know, where our borders are.
Absolutely. And of course, everybody has to decide this for themselves. But there are times when if you just say no once, you might never have to do it again. So, so think about those times and those invitations that perhaps you'd rather not. You know, for a lot of people, there's a transition in mid-adulthood to not perhaps going to your parents' house, you know, having your own Christmas, or finding something that's less frenetic and hectic, some pattern. And so there might be, you know, a little bit of, you know, hurt expressed if you change a pattern, but it might be so much less stressful that it's worth it. You know, I always think of, if you have a choice between guilt and resentment, always go with guilt, because guilt will dissipate, resentment just builds and builds and builds. So, you know, and of course, it's very specific to the individual and their family. But if you think, wow, if I didn't have to go to both my in-laws' house and my mother's house on the same day, my life would be easier. You know, see what you can work out. Maybe you don't have to do that.
Right. Oh, I love that you said that about guilt and resentment. That really resonates. Okay, so let's dive a little bit into how much alcohol is available. And you know, usually we see it's on TV, it's in the magazines, it's in all of the shows that we watch, it's everywhere. How do maybe those that are new in recovery or even a long time in recovery from, alcohol use disorder, how do they go into the holidays um, protecting is what I like to say, protecting their sobriety?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think, again, it's very individual. So for somebody, say, who knows they have a serious issue and are new in recovery, this might be the year to not go to certain functions. I don't think that's a long-term solution or the way you want to live your life, but I do think only you know how serious your issue is and how important your sobriety is to you and how new you are in sobriety. So, cutting some things out temporarily might be the way to go for people new in sobriety. For people who are more wanting to cut back or who have some more established sobriety, I think just going into your events with intentionality. And so what does that mean? To me, that means sort of playing the scene out in your head. Is there going to, are you going to get a lot of pressure? You know where you're going, the people you're going to probably be with, and, figure out what you're going to say. Just figure it out. It doesn't really, most people will leave you alone if you say, oh, I'm not drinking tonight. You don't have to say a lot more than that. But figure it out beforehand. So basically, don't let it just be like, oh my God, I don't know what to say. And then I had a drink in my hand. And also there's some really, really good alcohol-free beverages these days. It didn't used to be the case. There's some alcohol-free beers that are actually really good, and canned cocktails. So if that helps, or seltzer, it often helps at a party to have something in your hand. It prevents people from bugging you. So if you're wanting to cut down, I think that's when you probably need to be the most intentional, because alcohol is one of those things, once you have a drink in you, you're less likely to keep to your plan. So you need to be realistic about that. And sometimes enlisting a buddy can be really helpful. The buddy could be your spouse if that's who is truly on your side on this, or it could just be a friend that's going to be at the gathering. But somebody who, not that they're watching you like a hawk, but it's just a commitment strategy to say, I'm only going to have, here's my plan. I'm going to have no more than 2 glasses of wine, and in between, I'm going to have seltzer water. And you tell the other person that, and it just helps. It helps to know that you've told somebody, and you can get through it that way. But planfulness and trying to play out every scenario, I think, is very important if you're serious about it.
I totally agree. Yeah, I like the having something in your hand. A lot of times, people won't ask you. And then I like the very first thing you said, where you say, I'm just not drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And you don't need to give an explanation.
Yeah.
And you say it with confidence. And most people go, okay.
Yeah.
And
I would say that the opposite of that, Pam, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, would be to say, oh, I'm trying to cut back. Don't say that, because there's nothing like that, nothing like a challenge to get the drinkers to try to get you to have a drink. So, and also it's just not a good statement. You're either doing it or you're not doing it. As Yoda said, there is no try, right? So,
yeah.
So yeah, just if you decide what your reasons are, why you want to drink, or how much you want to drink, or whether you want to drink. Do remember that, like what we were talking about at the beginning, the more you're drinking or overeating, the worse you're going to feel physically, which just contributes to other stress, So if nothing else, that might be a motivator, is I want to feel good. Which would be the other side of this, Pam, is try your best to keep up with your good habits. Can you get to the gym, when you're traveling to your parents' house? Is there a gym that you could just pop into, etc.? Can you go on walks and runs? Because that is going to balance you out and stop like a real spiral.
Right. No, I love all of those. Okay. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. And so we've said a lot and we did a little bit of a deep dive, but I guess I wanted to kind of wrap up with maybe an overview or a summary of what we said. And I think for me, as I'm, looking back on what we said, is the biggest takeaway for me is be intentional. Be intentional about how you want the holidays to go for you, that when you're on the other side of the holidays, you don't look back and regret not having a plan, not having a vision, that you went into it with intentionality and you came out and said, I did exactly what I had envisioned I was going to do, and it played out as much as I could according to how I wanted to feel, how I wanted to look, how I wanted to act. And then for those times where maybe it was out of my control, I knew how to handle that situation. I had thought about that beforehand. We did mention travel, which is, a lot of people do travel during the holidays. And I totally agree. Traveling these days is not fun. I used to look forward to traveling, but no, not anymore.
I agree. Pam, I just wanted to say one other thing
Yeah,
for people
absolutely.
who do have traumatic memories that come up, that it's very common to sort of withdraw. Everybody else is having a good time. You guys go have a good time. I would really encourage those folks to make new memories, because that is a wonderful way to sort of overlay the old bad stuff. Do something completely different. If your family that gave you some trauma, stayed home at Christmas, maybe you guys should go to a vacation spot. Maybe you should just try something different and make a new intentional memory, so that all Thanksgivings and all Christmases don't refer you back to the bad times.
Yeah. Along those lines, let's touch on this just for a minute or two. When you have, let's say you have no choice, you are going to be with family, and that there's past trauma or some history there. And every year you walk away from that meal, that time spent together, not feeling good. It's just a re-triggering of the past. What would you advise people if they know they have to be with family and they know that there's going to be the same probably dynamic going on? How could they be different? What could they do about it?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One is, if you are bringing a partner with you, sometimes you and your partner can play a game. Like, let's count how many times mom criticizes me, and then you and your partner are sort of smiling at each other instead of feeling bad about it. The other thing is, you can control yourself. You can't control that other people are going to say the same old thing. But most of the time, what really feels bad is your mother criticizes you and you respond exactly like a 13-year-old. That's what really feels bad. So it feels bad that she criticized you, but it feels worse that you respond like you used to. So again, that intentionality, what do you want to do? Do you want to smile and say thanks? Or do you want to get up from the table? Really, anything is okay. It's your choice. It's just figure out how can you respond in that difficult situation. And overall with family, take breaks. Can you and your family, if you're visiting your family of origin, can you guys go out for a day? You don't have to be in the house 24/7.
Okay. So again, maybe knowing how past dynamic has played out, how do I choose to be different this year? Knowing that I can't control anybody else in my family, but I do control how I respond in my actions. And so what do I choose to do that's different than maybe how I've done it before? And let's see what happens if I do something different.
Yeah, it still can feel bad, but not as bad as yourself losing control.
Right. I always think of the mobile that goes around and around, and it's very balanced as long as everybody is playing their role.
Right.
And one person doesn't play the role, or you snip off one piece of that mobile and it tilts the whole mobile and doesn't go around anymore. But sometimes that's a good thing, is to disrupt kind of the same pattern. So okay. So I would love to hear last words from you on this topic, and anything else that you think is poignant to say, or what you want to leave people with this holiday season.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Pam. Intentionality is the way to go. But anything that you're doing good for yourself during the rest of the year, you should actually double down on that rather than back away from it. So all of the normal things, mindfulness is like the vitamin C of mental health for me. So I really encourage anyone to double down on their mindfulness practice or start it. It's wonderful. It allows you a lot of equanimity and peace. Sleep, eating well, exercise, all of those things. And make sure you're paying attention to meaning. We are creatures of meaning, and depression is often a disorder of lack of meaning. So what's meaningful to you?
I love that. Yes, I double down on exercise. That is where I get my, I have to exercise. Yeah. So, okay. Well, great. I think this has been really productive. I think we've given some good information to our listeners. I hope they're a little more equipped to go into the holiday season. Thinking, knowing, or intentionally doing something different if they need to, right? That's what I hope. Make a plan, have a vision, be intentional about it. Dare to change, dare to let go of things that don't serve you well anymore, and maybe pick up things that do. So I thank you very much, Dr. Sandeen, for being here today. If people want to reach you, I know you're on Google. Your email.
My email is Dr. Evelyn Sandeen at gmail.com. So it's Dr. Evelyn Sandeen.
Great. Thank you very much. All right.
Okay.
I hope you have a very happy holiday season.
Same to you, Pam. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This episode was produced by the State Bar of New Mexico's Wellbeing Committee and the New Mexico Judges and Lawyers Assistance Program. All editing and sound mixing was done by Blue Sky eLearn. Intro music is by Gil Flores. The views of the presenters are that of their own and are not endorsed by the State Bar of New Mexico. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, or legal advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.